nice warm welcome for Stella Harris.
I'm a professional sex educator, and I also lead an interesting personal life. So an average week for me includes some colorful emails. Even so, when I got a note from a couple of my sex educator friends that they were having a fisting party the next night, that got my attention. My first mystery box show story was about fisting, so I got myself a bit of a reputation. So when a couple of my friends wanted to learn about how to do it, they said I was the first person they thought of. This can be a bit of a problem in my field. People on dating apps seem to think that, "Hey baby, I bet you could teach me a thing or two," is a great pickup line. I don't want to work in my downtime, and I definitely don't want to teach in my personal sex life. Even so, because this message came from other sex educators who I knew had similar experiences, I knew that this would be an equal exchange. So I went to the party, and there were only 5 of us. 3 other sex educators and a woman that I knew from other queer sex parties. We spent a long time having snacks and chatting and, setting the mood as you do. And then we went upstairs. The other woman that I knew from the sex parties and I sort of got the party started because we were familiar with that sort of energy and dynamic. So even though it was casual and fun and playful, I was also describing what I was doing as I was warming her up with a vulva massage and checking in each time I added an additional finger. And I was showing everybody else what I was doing as I tucked in my thumb to make my fist as narrow as possible. And everyone was watching as I worked my hand all the way inside of her. Once she was completely warmed up, everybody else took a turn. And it was really amazing to watch the look on people's faces when they got their entire hand in somebody's body for the first time ever. So needless to say, that first party was a hit. And we decided to make it a regular thing. The core group of folks grew to about 12 people, and we were all femme-identified. So what that means is that we go through the world appearing feminine, and that's just a little bit more inclusive than saying women. And what this sort of involved for each of us was that each time was not necessarily themed, but someone would propose what they wanted to think about that time. So sometimes we focused on kinky things. One time we had sort of a show and tell about squirting. And one particularly memorable example was that somebody wanted to choose a new dildo. So each of us put on a strap-on harness, and we lay side by side on this giant, 2 beds shoved together situation. And Calico, sort of Goldilocks style, worked her way down the line to find the cock that was just right. In case you're curious, it was the one that I was wearing, known as the Captain. And I tell you this not just because it is a stunning visual, but to try to explain this space that we had created that was so safe for femme folks to explore their sexuality. So as somebody who generally goes through the world looking super feminine, I'm not generally read as queer. And this has even been said to my face. I had a woman once tell me, "I would have hit on you years ago if I knew you were queer." So it's really amazing for me to be in a space where I am immediately seen and I don't need to worry about looking queer enough. So not only was this space sort of inherently magical, but we did a few things to make it safe and make it comfortable for everybody. For one thing, we started every party with an opening circle, which is basically what it sounds like. We would sit in an actual circle and everyone would talk about their feelings and what their week had been like, and what sort of fantasies they would like to manifest for that night. And that's also when we would talk about STI information. So we would share when we were last tested, and what our partner situation was, and what sort of barrier use made us feel the most safe. This is also when we would lead into our icebreaker, which was spin the bottle. But we put a little twist on it. We have a consent-oriented form of spin the bottle. So when you spin on somebody, you propose something, like perhaps a kiss, but then they can make a counter-proposal, like, how about a hug instead? And people were also really encouraged to get creative. So we would have people feeding each other things off of the snack tables, like berries. One person was really into pickles, would always want someone to feed her a pickle. Sometimes folks would do a little dance together, basically anything that you can imagine. And that got people in the habit of asking for what they want and feeling silly, and usually that game would just transition into whatever else was going to happen that night. So because this was a space where I generally felt so safe, I was able to feel more vulnerable at these parties than I usually feel at other sex and kink parties. Even so, it took me a few months to work up to receiving penetration at one of these parties. So as a true exhibitionist, I finally went for it the night that we were recording Emery Jane's podcast. Something about having a microphone in my face just made me want to get fucked. So I started by topping Epiphora, and I was using my hands on her and speaking into AJ's podcast as she was asking me about what I was doing. And then we switched, and Epiphora had her fingers in me. And because of what a good communicator Piff was and what a safe environment we created there, I was able to say exactly what kind of touch I needed to reach orgasm. And as we were playing, other people were coming up to me, asking if they could kiss me, asking if they could play with my breasts. And it felt really amazing to be in this space where I could be the center of attention in a way that felt really safe. So this group became something that was really important to me. The group as a whole almost felt like a partner, and all of our bonds were increasing over time, and our sort of monthly or every other month meetings were becoming one of the favorite things that I look forward to on the calendar. But while that connection was increasing, the rest of my personal life was getting kind of rocky. Last August, I broke up with someone I had been seeing for 3 years. And then in November, a 2-year relationship ended. And then a couple of weeks after that, another relationship ended. If you're having a problem with the math there, it's because I'm polyamorous, and I had the extreme misfortune of having multiple relationships end within a short time period. So the upshot of that was that for basically the first time since I was a teenager, I was more or less single. And I started to notice things that I had been taking for granted. Although I'm very lucky that sex is fairly easy to find, all of the rest of the things that come with a relationship, like, the tenderness and the touch and just the offhand intimacy of a squeeze on the shoulder for support or snuggling with somebody while you watch a movie, all of that was missing, and it was having a real emotional toll on me. I would break out crying for no reason whatsoever. I would cancel plans last minute with friends because I wasn't sure I could keep it together in public. And that's the state I was in when I got the next little Facebook alert that a femme coven party was coming up. And my first thought was, well, I can't go to that. I am not feeling at all sexy. I'm going to be a huge bummer for everybody else. So I posted to the group saying, I'm just not in that place right now. I don't think I can do it. And immediately I was met with a series of supportive and encouraging messages saying, we get it if you can't be here, but we really hope you'll be here anyway. So I just barely pulled myself together, and I went to the party. And we started the way we normally did, with the opening circle. And one person said that they wanted to be fisted, because of course, and someone else said that they wanted to be spanked. And then it got to me, and it was really hard for me, and I really had to push myself. I have a lot of caretaking tendencies, and it can be hard for me to ask for what I want. I didn't ask for anything sexual. I just told everyone what a hard time that I'd been having, and that what I really needed was just hugs and snuggles and support. And it was so hard to get the words out, but everyone was immediately so supportive. And this group of people that I was used to doing kink with or used to having sex with was coming up to me and offering hugs and snuggles and massages. And at one point, I had 4 people massaging me at once while my head was in Calico's lap and she was petting my hair. And that just warmth and tenderness and skin-to-skin contact was exactly what I had been missing. And no matter how many wild, extreme, and kinky and sexual things that I've done in my life, that felt like the most vulnerable I'd ever been. And I was close to tears. And that was a real learning moment for me as somebody who teaches people how to ask for what they want. It was humbling and educational to have had to ask for something that felt so difficult for me. And I think that's kind of the point. It's easy to ask for something that we think another person wants to give, but it's something else altogether to ask for what we really need to receive.